Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with every mistake, failure, and regret from your past. With each step, the weight presses down on you, making it harder to move forward. No matter how much you want to let go, the burden remains, reminding you of everything you've done wrong or everything that has been done to you. Now, imagine setting that backpack down, completely, permanently walking away, free, unchained, and at peace. That is what true surrender to God looks like. So many people live their lives carrying burdens they were never meant to bear. They try to control every detail, fix every problem, and rewrite their past mistakes, only to find themselves exhausted, anxious, and stuck. The truth is, we were never meant to handle life alone. We were created to surrender, not as a sign of weakness, but as a pathway to strength, peace, and freedom. When we surrender to God, we are not losing, we are gaining everything. Today, I want to talk about what it truly means to surrender, to let go of control, fear, and doubt, and to trust God fully, because only in surrender do we find the life we were always meant to live. Letting go is one of the hardest things for human beings to do. From the time we are young, we are taught to take control, make decisions, and shape our lives according to our own desires. Society tells us that the key to success is working hard, taking charge, and never backing down. But when it comes to our spiritual journey, this mindset often becomes a burden rather than a blessing. We struggle under the weight of our own expectations, constantly striving for something more, yet never feeling truly fulfilled. We worry, we stress, and we try to manage every detail of our lives only to find ourselves exhausted, frustrated, and lost. The truth is, we were never meant to carry these burdens alone. The peace we seek, the purpose we long for, and the joy we desire can only be found when we let go and surrender our lives fully to God. Surrender is not about giving up, it is about giving over. It is the conscious decision to place our trust in God rather than in ourselves. It requires faith, humility, and a willingness to let go of control. This does not mean we stop making decisions or that we sit back and wait for life to happen. Rather, it means that we recognize that God is the one who holds the ultimate plan, and we choose to follow His lead instead of insisting on our own way. When we surrender, we acknowledge that God's wisdom is far greater than ours, that His love for us is deeper than we can comprehend, and that His plans for our lives are better than anything we could ever design for ourselves. One of the greatest obstacles to surrender is fear. We are afraid of the unknown, afraid of losing what we have worked for, and afraid that God's plan may not align with our own desires. We hesitate because we do not want to relinquish control, believing that if we let go, we might lose something valuable. But this fear is rooted in a misunderstanding of who God is. He is not a distant ruler who wants to take away our happiness. He is a loving Father who desires the very best for us. His plans are not meant to harm us, but to prosper us, to lead us into a life of abundance, joy, and eternal fulfillment. When we surrender, we are not losing anything, rather we are gaining everything. We are stepping into the life we were created to live, a life filled with divine purpose, guidance, and unshakable peace. Many people resist surrender because they believe that it means weakness. The world tells us that to be strong, we must be independent, self-sufficient, and always in control. But in God's kingdom, strength is found in dependence on Him. When we surrender, we acknowledge that we are not strong enough to handle everything on our own, and that is okay. In fact, it is in our weakness that God's strength is most evident. When we lay down our pride and our need for control, we make room for God to work in our lives in ways we never imagined. He takes our burdens and replaces them with His peace. He takes our struggles and turns them into testimonies of His faithfulness. Letting go does not mean that life will suddenly become easy or that we will never face trials. There will still be challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But the difference is that when we surrender to God, we no longer face these struggles alone. He walks with us through every storm, giving us the strength to endure, the wisdom to navigate difficulties, and the reassurance that He is always in control. When we surrender, we find rest, not because our circumstances change instantly, but because our hearts are at peace, knowing that God is leading the way. Ultimately, surrender is an act of trust. It is believing that God is who He says He is and that He will do what He has promised. It is releasing our grip on our own plans and stepping into His divine purpose. It is saying, God, I trust you more than I trust myself. When we truly surrender, we experience a freedom that cannot be found anywhere else. We no longer have to carry the weight of our worries, the pressure of success, or the burden of trying to figure everything out on our own. Instead, we rest in the assurance that the one who created the universe is holding our lives in His hands, guiding us toward a future far greater than anything we could ever achieve on our own. We often go through life making plans, setting goals, and striving to create a future that aligns with our desires. We have dreams we want to achieve, relationships we want to build, and paths we want to follow. From a young age, we are taught to take control of our lives, to work hard, and to do whatever it takes to reach success. Society places a high value on independence, self-sufficiency, and the ability to dictate our own destiny. We are told that if we want something, we must go after it with everything we have, and if we work hard enough, we will eventually achieve it. But no matter how carefully we plan or how much effort we put into shaping our future, life has a way of reminding us that we are not truly in control. Unexpected challenges arise, plans fall apart, and things do not always go the way we had envisioned. It is in these moments that we begin to realize that our own wisdom and strength have limits. No matter how much we try, we cannot predict or control everything that happens in our lives. God, on the other hand, sees the full picture. While we can only see what is right in front of us, He knows the beginning and the end. His wisdom is far greater than ours, and His perspective is beyond our comprehension. He sees the obstacles ahead, the dangers we are unaware of, and the opportunities that we might overlook. When we surrender to Him, we are not giving up on our dreams or letting go of our ambitions. We are placing them in the hands of the one who knows what is best for us. What may seem like a setback to us could actually be God redirecting us towards something greater. What feels like a failure may be a necessary step in His divine plan for our lives. When we trust in His plan instead of our own, we open ourselves to a life that is far richer, more meaningful, and more fulfilling than anything we could have orchestrated on our own. One of the biggest struggles we face is accepting that God's timing is not always the same as ours. We often want things to happen immediately. We pray for doors to open, for opportunities to come our way, and for circumstances to change. But when things don't happen as quickly as we would like, we become frustrated. We may even start to doubt whether God is listening or whether He cares about our desires. But God operates on His own perfect timeline, and His delays are not denials. Sometimes He withholds certain things from us because He knows we are not ready for them yet. Other times, He allows us to experience hardships because they are shaping us, refining us, and preparing us for something greater. If we could see what He sees, we would understand why certain things don't happen the way we want them to. But faith requires us to trust Him even when we don't understand. Surrendering to God's plan means accepting that He knows what is best, even when it doesn't make sense to us. It requires humility because we must acknowledge that our own understanding is limited. It requires patience because we must wait on His timing instead of forcing things to happen on our own. It requires obedience because sometimes God calls us to step out in faith even when we don't know where the road will lead. The world tells us to take control, to chase after success, and to do whatever it takes to make things happen. But God calls us to lay down our plans at His feet and trust that He will lead us in the right direction. When we surrender to God, we experience a peace that cannot be found in human effort alone. We no longer have to carry the weight of trying to figure everything out on our own. We don't have to live in constant worry about whether we are making the right decisions. We don't have to fear the unknown because we know that the one who holds the universe is also holding our lives in His hands. His plans for us are good, and His purpose for us is far greater than anything we could ever create for ourselves. All He asks is that we trust Him, let go of our own understanding, and allow Him to lead us on the path He has designed specifically for us. Trusting God when everything is clear and life is going well is easy. But faith is not tested in times of certainty. It is tested in moments of uncertainty, when the path ahead is unclear and we cannot see what is coming next. Human nature desires security, clarity, and a sense of control over the future. We want to know where we are going, how things will unfold, and what the outcome will be. The unknown is unsettling, and when we cannot see what lies ahead, fear begins to creep in. We start questioning whether we are on the right path, whether God is really guiding us, and whether He is even listening. The struggle of faith is not in believing that God exists, but in trusting Him when life does not make sense. It is easy to say that we have faith when we have all the answers, but real faith is proven when we must trust God even in the absence of answers. Throughout history, there are countless examples of people who were called to trust God without knowing the full picture. They were not given step-by-step instructions or a clear roadmap. Instead, they were given a promise and an invitation to follow God into the unknown. Their journeys were not easy. They faced obstacles, challenges, and moments of doubt, yet each of them learned that God's ways are higher than human ways, and that His plans unfold in ways that often do not make sense at first. If they had relied on their own understanding, they would have never stepped forward. But because they trusted God, they walked into a future far greater than they could have ever imagined. One of the biggest challenges in trusting God is surrendering our desire to understand everything. Human logic tells us that we must see before we believe. We rely on evidence, patterns, and reasoning to determine the best course of action. But God's ways often defy human logic. He asks us to step forward in faith, even when we do not see where the road leads. He calls us to trust His guidance, even when it contradicts our own plans. He leads us in directions that do not always make sense in the moment, but later we realize that every step had a purpose. It is only when we look back that we see how perfectly He orchestrated everything. Waiting is another test of trust. When we pray for something and do not receive an immediate answer, it is tempting to take matters into our own hands. We convince ourselves that if God is not acting according to our timeline, then we must act on our own. But trusting in God means waiting on Him even when waiting feels impossible. Sometimes He delays certain things because we are not ready for them yet. Other times, He is preparing something greater than what we originally asked for. There are moments when we think we have been forgotten, but in reality, God is working behind the scenes, aligning things in ways we cannot yet see. Patience is difficult, but when we trust in God's timing rather than our own, we experience peace instead of anxiety. Fear is often the greatest barrier to trusting God. We are afraid of making the wrong choice, afraid of failure, and afraid of losing control. Fear makes us hesitate, keeping us from stepping into the plans God has for us. But fear and faith cannot exist together. When we allow fear to take over, we push God out of the equation and rely on ourselves instead. The moment we surrender our fears and place our trust in God, we break free from the chains that hold us back. We are no longer controlled by the uncertainties of life because we know that God is already ahead of us, preparing the way. Trusting in the unknown does not mean that we will never face struggles. Life will still have difficulties, disappointments, and moments of pain. But trusting God means believing that He is working all things together for good, even when we do not see how. It means knowing that He is not only present in our victories, but also in our struggles, guiding us even when we cannot feel His presence. When we trust God with the unknown, we let go of the need to control everything and find peace in knowing that our lives are in His hands. Many people believe that surrendering to God means losing their freedom, that by giving control of their lives to Him, they will no longer be able to make their own choices or follow their own dreams. This idea comes from the way the world defines freedom. Being independent, making one's own decisions, and living without restrictions. Society teaches that true freedom comes from having the ability to control every aspect of life, to chart one's own course without interference. But despite this belief, many people who chase after this type of freedom find themselves burdened, anxious, and unfulfilled. The reason is simple. The pursuit of complete self-reliance often leads to a life of worry, stress, and frustration. The very control people seek to maintain becomes the source of their greatest struggles. When we try to control our own lives completely, we carry the full weight of every decision, every responsibility, and every outcome. We become consumed with making the right choices, avoiding mistakes, and ensuring everything goes according to plan. This can lead to fear and insecurity because no matter how hard we try, there are always things beyond our control. Unexpected circumstances arise, people let us down, and situations take turns we never anticipated. This is why so many people who appear to have everything together on the outside still struggle with anxiety and dissatisfaction. They are carrying a burden they were never meant to bear alone. True freedom comes not from controlling everything, but from surrendering control to the one who created everything. God never intended for us to navigate life on our own. He designed us to walk with Him, to depend on Him, and to trust in His wisdom rather than our own understanding. When we surrender our lives to God, we are not losing freedom. We are gaining a far greater one. We are set free from the pressure of trying to figure everything out on our own, free from the fear of making the wrong decisions, and free from the anxiety that comes with uncertainty. Instead of being bound by worry, we step into a life of peace, knowing that God is in control. This type of surrender does not mean that we stop making choices or that we live passively without direction. Rather, it means that we acknowledge God's authority over our lives and allow Him to lead us. It means that instead of striving to do everything our own way, we seek His guidance and trust His plans. When we surrender, we align ourselves with His perfect will, which is far greater than anything we could create for ourselves. We no longer have to rely on our limited perspective because we are following the one who sees the full picture. One of the greatest examples of freedom through surrender is found in the peace that comes with trusting God. Many people live in constant fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. This fear can be paralyzing, keeping people from stepping into the fullness of life that God has prepared for them. But when we surrender our fears to Him, we are no longer controlled by them. We realize that we do not have to have all the answers or know exactly what the future holds because we trust that God is leading us where we need to be. Instead of being weighed down by fear, we are lifted up by faith. Another way surrender brings freedom is by releasing us from the need for approval. Many people spend their lives trying to please others, striving to meet expectations and seeking validation from the world. This can be exhausting, and no matter how hard someone tries, there will always be someone who disapproves or criticizes. But when we surrender to God, we no longer have to seek the approval of others. Our worth is not determined by people's opinions, but by God's love for us. We live not to impress the world, but to follow the purpose He has set before us. This kind of freedom allows us to live with confidence, knowing that we are fully accepted and loved by God. The world often views surrender as weakness, but in reality, it is one of the greatest acts of strength. It takes courage to let go of control, to trust in something greater than oneself, and to walk by faith instead of by sight. But when we do, we experience a level of freedom that the world cannot offer. We are no longer bound by worry, fear, or the pressure to control everything. Instead, we are free to live the life that God has called us to, a life filled with purpose, peace, and true joy. One of the greatest struggles people face in life is the overwhelming pressure to be strong, to have everything together, and to rely solely on their own abilities. Society teaches that success is achieved through independence, self-sufficiency, and determination. From an early age, people are encouraged to be strong, push through challenges, and never show weakness. The world views dependence on anything outside of oneself as a sign of failure. It celebrates those who take control of their destiny, overcome obstacles by their own strength, and refuse to rely on anyone else. However, this way of thinking creates an unbearable weight that people were never meant to carry. When they try to handle everything on their own, they eventually reach a breaking point where exhaustion, frustration, and anxiety take over. Many people live under the illusion that they must constantly prove themselves. They believe that if they stop striving, they will fall behind. If they admit they are struggling, they will be seen as weak. This mindset keeps them trapped in a cycle of stress and self-reliance, always trying to meet expectations, always trying to be enough. They may succeed in certain areas of life, but deep down, they are weary. No matter how much they achieve, there is always something more to chase, another challenge to overcome, another expectation to meet. They may convince themselves that they are in control, but in reality, they are carrying burdens that slowly drain them. God never intended for people to live this way. He did not create them to be self-sufficient, but to be in relationship with Him, relying on His strength rather than their own. He offers an alternative to the exhausting cycle of self-reliance: surrender. When people surrender to God, they are not admitting defeat. They are admitting that their own strength has limits, but that God's strength is limitless. but that God's strength is limitless. Surrendering does not mean giving up responsibilities or becoming passive. It means shifting the source of strength from self to God. It means recognizing that true power does not come from personal effort, but from trusting in God's ability to sustain, guide, and provide. One of the most freeing aspects of surrendering to God is realizing that weakness is not something to be ashamed of. The world teaches that weakness should be hidden, but God sees it differently. He invites people to bring their struggles, fears, and failures to Him rather than pretending to have everything figured out. His power is made perfect in weakness, meaning that it is in moments of struggle and surrender that His strength is most evident. When people stop trying to control everything and instead place their trust in Him, they find a strength beyond their own. They experience peace in the middle of challenges, joy in the face of uncertainty, and hope even in the darkest time. Letting go of self-reliance also means releasing the fear of failure. Many people hesitate to surrender to God because they fear that if they let go, everything will fall apart. They believe that if they stop striving, they will lose their purpose. But the opposite is true. Surrendering to God does not mean abandoning one's dreams, goals, or responsibilities. It means allowing Him to take the lead. It means trusting that He knows what is best and that His plans will always be greater than human plans. When people stop trying to force things to happen on their own and instead trust in God's timing and guidance, they experience a freedom they never knew was possible. Another burden that surrender lifts is the need to have all the answers. Many people wrestle with uncertainty, always searching for clarity, always questioning if they are making the right decisions. They feel pressure to figure everything out on their own, which can lead to stress, doubt, and hesitation. But God does not ask people to have all the answers. He simply asks them to trust Him. When they surrender their uncertainties to Him, they no longer have to live in fear of making mistakes. They can move forward in faith, knowing that even when they do not understand, God is guiding them. Surrendering to God brings rest. Not just physical rest, but deep, soul-level rest. The kind of rest that comes from knowing that life is not dependent on personal strength alone. The kind of rest that allows people to breathe, to stop striving, and to trust that they are held in the hands of a loving and sovereign God. When people stop relying on themselves and instead rely on Him, they discover a strength that never runs out and a peace that the world cannot give one. Of the most difficult things for people to do is let go of their past. Many live with regrets, holding on to mistakes, failures, and painful memories that weigh them down. Some struggle with guilt over things they have done, feeling unworthy of forgiveness. Others carry wounds from things that have been done to them, allowing bitterness and resentment to take root in their hearts. These burdens often shape the way people see themselves, making them believe they are defined by their past and that they cannot move forward. No matter how much they try to forget, these memories linger, influencing their decisions, relationships, and even their faith. Carrying the weight of the past is exhausting. It affects every part of life, creating shame, fear, and insecurity. People who hold on to their past often find themselves stuck, unable to fully embrace the present or the future. They may struggle with thoughts of unworthiness, believing that because of their past mistakes, they do not deserve happiness, success, or even God's love. Others become trapped in cycles of self-blame, replaying past failures over and over again in their minds, convinced that they will never be able to move beyond them. Even when they try to move forward, they feel as though something is always pulling them back, reminding them of what they have done or what has been done to them. God never intended for people to live in the bondage of their past. He offers complete forgiveness, redemption, and healing to those who surrender their past to Him. His grace is greater than any mistake, and His love is stronger than any pain. No matter how broken someone's past may be, God has the power to restore and make all things new. When a person surrenders their past to God, they are no longer defined by their failures, their sins, or their wounds. They are defined by His grace, His love, and His purpose for their life. The past no longer has power over them because God has already forgiven what needs to be forgiven, healed what needs to be healed, and redeemed what needs to be redeemed. One of the biggest struggles in surrendering the past is accepting God's forgiveness. Many people believe that their mistakes are too great, that they have gone too far, or that they are beyond redemption. They carry guilt and shame, feeling unworthy of God's love and grace. But God's forgiveness is not based on human effort. It is a gift freely given to all who come to Him. No sin is too great for His mercy, and no failure is beyond His ability to redeem. When God forgives, He does not hold the past against anyone. He wipes it away completely, offering a fresh start and a new identity. Those who surrender their past to Him do not have to live in shame any longer, because they are no longer defined by what they have done, but by what He has done for them. Another challenge is letting go of the pain caused by others. Many people carry deep wounds from past hurts, struggling to forgive those who have wronged them. They hold on to bitterness, believing that if they forgive, it means that what happened to them does not matter. But holding on to pain does not bring healing. It only keeps the wound open. When a person surrenders their pain to God, they are not excusing what happened. They are choosing to let go of the burden that is weighing them down. Forgiveness is not about freeing the other person. It is about freeing oneself. It is about trusting that God is the ultimate judge and that He will bring justice in His own time. When a person surrenders their pain to God, they find healing, peace, and the strength to move forward without being chained to the past. Surrendering the past also means surrendering the need for control over what cannot be changed. Many people spend years wishing they could go back and do things differently. They replay moments over and over again, thinking about what they should have said or done. But no matter how much someone dwells on the past, they cannot change it. The only thing they can change is how they respond to it. When they surrender their past to God, they stop looking back with regret and start looking forward with hope. They trust that God can use even the broken pieces of their past to create something beautiful. God's plan is not hindered by the past. He specializes in taking what is broken and making it whole. He turns pain into purpose, failure into growth, and regret into redemption. Those who surrender their past to Him do not have to be bound by what was. They can step into what is and what will be. They can walk in freedom, knowing that they are not their mistakes, not their wounds, and not their failures. They are His, and He has a future for them that is far greater than anything their past could ever define. Surrendering to God is not about losing control. It is about placing our trust in the one who has always been in control. It is about releasing the burdens we were never meant to carry and walking in the freedom He has promised us. When we surrender, we exchange fear for faith, uncertainty for peace, and weakness for His strength. We let go of the need to have all the answers and trust that His plan is greater than anything we could imagine. Life will always bring challenges, struggles, and moments of uncertainty, but when we choose to surrender to God, we no longer have to face them alone. We can move forward, not bound by our past, not consumed by our worries, but confident that He is guiding us every step of the way. He does not ask us to have it all figured out. He simply asks us to trust Him, to follow Him, and to believe that He is working all things for our good. So today, the choice is before us. Will we continue striving, carrying our burdens alone, or will we lay them at His feet and walk in the peace and freedom that surrender brings? The answer to that question will define the way we live, not just today, but for eternity.